I lost my favorite plant, so I built this garage invention. Many years ago, when I was in the army, I had a favorite plant. It was not expensive, it was not rare. It was not some amazing plant that would impress anybody walking by. But to me, it mattered. It was a young spider plant, and I named it Green. I kept Green next to the only window in my two-man room. That was the spot where the light came in. That was the place where it had the best chance. And over time, that little plant became part of the room. I wrote home about it. I watched it grow. I checked the soil. I watered it. I cared about it. One time, after going fishing with a friend, I even had a worm or two left over, and I put them in the dirt around the plant. I was not a plant expert. I was not some master gardener. I just thought maybe it would help the soil. Maybe Green would like it. And I had good vibes for that little spider plant. It sounds simple now, but sometimes small things matter because they are yours. A plant can become more than a plant. It can become a little sign of life in a plain room, a little piece of calm, a little responsibility, a little thing you are trying to keep alive. Then one day, we were called out on a field exercise. Before we left, I watered Green really well. I stood there looking at that plant, hoping it would make it. I knew I would be gone for a while. I knew there would be no one there to water it. But I hoped the soil would hold enough moisture. I hoped the plant was strong enough. We left, and we were gone for 4 weeks. When I came back, the room was still there. The window was still there. The pot was still there. But Green was dry, dead, gone from life, and I remember feeling bad about it. Because all it needed was water, not a miracle, not some expensive machine, not a complicated answer, just water, while I was away. And that is where today's garage invention begins, because this video is not just about building a plant waterer. It is about a simple question. Can we build something in the garage that protects a living thing when life pulls us away? People do not always forget plants because they do not care. Sometimes life gets busy. Sometimes work calls. Sometimes family calls. Sometimes you travel. Sometimes you are tired. Sometimes you think, I will water it tomorrow, and tomorrow turns into 3 days. And sometimes, like in the army, you do not get to choose when you leave or when you come back. So today, the goal is simple. I want to build a small automatic watering system. Nothing fancy, nothing that requires a laboratory. Just a practical garage invention that can slowly give a plant water when a person is not there to do it. I am calling it the Forget-Me-Not Waterer, because the whole point is this. A plant should not have to die just because life got in the way. The basic idea is simple. We need a water source. We need a way to move the water. We need a way to control when the water moves. And we need a way to deliver that water gently into the soil. That means the heart of this invention is a small water container, a small low-voltage pump, some tubing, a timer, and a drip line going into the plant. The water container can be a bucket, a jug, or a small plastic storage bin. It does not have to look pretty. It just has to hold enough water for the plant while you are gone. The pump does not need to be powerful. In fact, too much power is the enemy here. We are not trying to blast water into the pot. We are trying to give the plant a slow drink. The tubing carries the water from the container to the plant. The timer controls when the pump turns on. And the drip end makes sure the water goes into the soil instead of flooding everything at once. That is the invention. A small system that waits. A small system that wakes up. A small system that waters the plant, then shuts itself back off. But before trusting it with a real plant, it has to be tested. That is important. A garage invention should never go straight from the workbench into real life without testing, especially when water is involved, and especially when electricity is involved. So the first test is not with a plant. The first test is with a cup. Put the pump in the water container. Run the tube into a measuring cup. Turn on the timer or switch. Then see how much water comes out in 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. That tells us the truth. Because guessing is how you drown a plant. Some plants need more water, some need less. A small pot can flood quickly. A big pot may need more time. Soil can hold water differently depending on what it is made of. So instead of guessing, we measure. Maybe 10 seconds gives a small drink. Maybe 30 seconds gives too much. Maybe the pump is stronger than expected. Maybe the tubing needs a smaller opening. This is where the invention becomes real, not in the idea, in the testing. Because a good invention is not just something that works once. It is something you understand well enough to trust. After the cup test, the next step is the soil test. Put the tube into the pot. Turn the system on for a short time. Watch where the water goes. Does it soak into the soil? Does it run down one side? Does it leak out of the bottom too fast? Does the tube jump out of the pot? Does the container sit high enough? Is the pump safe? Are the wires away from spilled water? These details matter. And this is where a simple build becomes a real garage inventor project. You adjust, you test, you slow it down. You secure the tube, you raise the reservoir, you lower the reservoir, you shorten the runtime, you change the drip end, you make it better. The first version does not have to be perfect. The first version just has to teach you what the second version should become. And that is one of the best things about building something yourself. You stop being just a buyer, you become a problem solver. If the plant needs less water, you change the timing. If the water comes too fast, you restrict the flow. If the tube moves, you clip it in place. If the reservoir is too small, you use a bigger one. If you want to leave for longer, you calculate how much water the plant uses each day. This is not just a plant water anymore, it is a small life support system. And maybe that sounds dramatic, but in a way, that is exactly what it is. It holds water in reserve, it delivers that water slowly, it keeps the soil from drying out completely, it buys time. And sometimes time is the difference between coming home to something still alive and coming home to an empty little pot beside a window. Now, there are smarter versions of this invention too. You could add a soil moisture sensor so the system only waters when the soil gets dry. You could add a battery backup so it still works if the power goes out. You could add a solar panel for a patio garden. You could split the tubing to water several plants at once. You could even build a bigger version for a small kitchen garden. But the first version should stay simple, because simple is powerful. A bucket, a pump, a tube, a timer, a plant. That is enough to prove the idea, and for a free school garage project, that matters. The goal is not to build the most complicated machine possible. The goal is to build something useful, something understandable, something a regular person can look at and say, I could make that better. I could build my own version. That is the spirit of it. Not perfect, not expensive, not over-designed, just useful. And this little invention could help more people than we might think. It could help someone who travels for work. It could help a family going on vacation. It could help an older person who forgets sometimes. It could help a beginner gardener who is trying to keep their first plants alive. It could help someone growing herbs on a patio. It could help someone who wants to grow a little food but cannot babysit the pots every day. And maybe, in some small way, it could help someone who once lost a plant and never forgot it. Because I still remember green. I remember the room. I remember the window. I remember the young spider plant. I remember putting those worms in the dirt thinking I was helping. I remember watering it before we left. And I remember coming back 4 weeks later and seeing that it did not make it. That little plant did not change the world. But it changed the way I think about small responsibilities. Because when you care for something living, even something small, you make a quiet promise. You do not say it out loud. You do not write it down. But the promise is there. I will try to keep you alive. And when life interrupts that promise, it can stay with you. That is why garage inventions matter to me. They are not only about tools and parts. They are about solving the little problems that touch real life. They are about taking a regret or a frustration or a failure and asking, can I build something better? Not someday, not in a factory, not with a giant budget. Here, now, on this workbench. That is what the forget-me-not waterer represents. It is not just tubing and a pump. It is a second chance machine. A small answer to an old memory. I could not save green back then. But maybe this little invention could save the next one. And maybe that is where good ideas begin. Not with something huge, but with something personal. A dead plant beside a window. A quiet regret. A simple question. And a garage full of parts waiting to become an answer. So today's lesson is this. When life pulls you away, the things you care about still need care. And sometimes, the best invention is not the one that looks the most impressive. Sometimes the best invention is the one that quietly keeps something alive until you come home. This is Spark an Idea, and this is the beginning of the Plant Saver build.